Hi everybody, my name is Sheila Landry and I'm here on behalf of Tolltown, the painting community at www.tolltown.com. I teach a couple classes a year through Tolltown, and I like to do some short videos to give some techniques and to teach you guys something new, hopefully. And today, for June of 2018, my project is this water lily, and I already painted the project, obviously, and the pattern's gonna be available on the site, and after the month of June it'll be on my website. And like all my patterns, it has lots of color step-by-step photos, so I figure that will explain itself. But what I am going to show you how to do today is the frame. And what I want to teach you is to use DecoArt's one-step crackle. I have a video already on the weathered wood, which gives like a aged wood effect, and that's a different crackle where you apply a dark base, apply the crackle, and then a lighter top coat, and it cracks, and the dark base of crack shows through, and the lighter color that you choose is on top. So that is a different finish than the one step, and the difference with the one step is you put your color on first, then you put the one step crackle on, you let it dry, and it gives fine cracks. It doesn't give the big weathered look like with the big splits in it. It gives more of what I call like an aged porcelain look, like when you have pottery or that, with little tiny fine cracks. And you can't really see it after it's dry until you antique it or use a top coat of some sort. And what I think I'm going to do for this frame is use warm white for the base, and then I'm going to wash it with DecoArt's Extreme Sheen Vintage Brass, which is like a really nice shiny gold, because I want this to look a little bit elegant. I don't want it to look like country. So the other thing I'm going to show you today is this is my typical beveled edge two-piece surface. I have lots of shapes and ornaments like this, and this is the type of frame I use. I cut the piece on a bevel so that the center presses in, you glue it into place, and it gives a little bit of dimension to it. It's called like a self-framing, and it's really nice to work with. I've sold a lot of these surfaces, and a lot of times people ask me how to paint them and how to put them together. So I'm going to show you how to do the crackle on the frame, and then I'm going to show you how to glue it together. So it'll kind of be a nice video for any of you who have ornaments or whatever that you want to see how I do them. There's other ways to do them too. Everybody likes their own way, but we'll start with this. So I'll be right back, and we'll start painting the frame in a minute. Thanks. Okay, let's get going with painting. I'm going to pop out the center of my frame and put that aside. I know some people like to glue the two pieces before they paint, but I prefer to do it after, because to me it's a lot easier to do the beveled edge and without having to worry about getting paint on the base part. I'm going to use warm white paint for the base, and you could use any of the whites. They really look quite similar. I'm using a 1-inch brush by DecoArt. It's nice and soft, and it's a large enough brush that it'll get the job done quickly. You dampen the brush first, which I'm going to do off screen, and pick up paint. And when I paint things, like I want the edges of this piece to be gold, and I want the inside beveled edge also to be gold, because then it'll really look nice as a frame. So really what I'm going to do with the white is do the top of the piece. And to do that without making streaks or without getting over the edge too much, I start in the middle and pull the paint to the outer edge. Now you could get it, if it gets a little over the edge, it's not a big deal. There's a couple things I want to tell you with MDF. Like any wood, it's going to absorb the water in the acrylic paint, and it'll swell on the first coat. So I guess my first word of advice is that you're not going to be able to cover it in 1 or 2 coats. You're better off applying a thin coat that may not look so great, and what will happen is the fibers will absorb the moisture from your paint and they'll swell a little. It'll feel rough when it dries, and the acrylic in the paint will kind of freeze it into place, those raised fibers. So once that happens, once the paint dries, we're going to take some sandpaper, some very fine grit sandpaper, and knock down those fibers again and sand. Not hard, not to sand it all off, but just to sand those raised fibers. And once we do that, then the subsequent coats should just sit on top nicely, and you won't get the raising of the fibers. This will work with both wood and MDF. Okay? So I'm going over the edges, or the tops, excuse me. And what I do is I go to the middle and I pull towards the edge. And it keeps your edges, I don't know how the camera's doing, but it keeps your edges pretty clean that way. Now I may do white on the outer edge, but I don't have to decide right now. But I know for sure I'm going to use the gold on an inner edge, because that'll look really nice. And with the gold finish, I'm going to float around the edges with gold, you'll see. Now see, this is the first coat, I'll put it that way so you could see it for sure. And you could see how it's pretty thin there. But we're going to leave it alone, let it dry, and then I will come right back and show you the next step. Now this is going to look ugly, even if it's on a big piece, but you have to bear with it. So hang with me, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I've given that a little time to dry, and I'm going to do this on camera just because so you understand what I'm doing here. Now I'm going to sand this a little. It feels a little rough, especially on the edges. You could use a sanding disc from like Artist Club. You could use these sanding, they're like sponges. They're really nice because they're fine grain and they go around the edges nice. Or fine sanding paper. I like the emery cloth type, but this is a fine grain, but you could go a little aggressive with that. So I think I'm going to use the sponge. And now just go really lightly over it. You'll be able to feel it more than see it. Like, you're not going to see a difference in it, really. I just go real light, so it's not something you want to exhaust yourself with, because the pieces should be sanded nice before you start. So this is just, like, as I said, knock down the paint, and you're going to feel how smooth it is, even though it still looks ugly. Okay? And what I do, this is a damp paper towel, just wipe it. I'm not a big fan of tack cloths, even though I'm a woodworker, because they tend to leave sticky crap on your stuff, and they can interfere with your paint or your finish. So I don't suggest that. What I would suggest is get a good paper towel. Like this is one of those shop cloths, but I don't like the blue. I like the white, because you don't want the dye from them coming off on your pieces either if you use alcohol or something, which I do sometimes. But like a Viva or something, and if it's damp, just use a clean edge and that picks up just about all the dust you have to pick up on it. And dampen and blot your brush again and load it up. Not too much paint. It's too much paint. The first time it's usually too wet. You have to blot it. And you're going to see this one will go on nice, smoother. Same thing, you're going to go from the center areas out. I guess it's good to show you on a frame. You could take, if you have a bigger piece, you take a long strokes. You want this one to be a little smoother than the last one. It's still probably not going to cover. And one thing I want to tell you as a hint for your other stuff that you're painting on MDF, I like to cover it with at least 1 or 2 coats of buttermilk paint before I transfer my design, unless I'm going really dark, like for Amy Magish's stuff. And then I use the black, but if you want your colors to come up true, like the yellows and, you know, the reds, you want to bring your surface color up from that brown that the MDF is. It's kind of dark, like our 12 days. I base coated all those with the buttermilk that Lynn Andrews uses. And it is definitely worth the extra layers, because then you're not struggling with your colors. You do it in the beginning and you're done with it. And it keeps your colors bright and true and gives you a really nice surface to paint on. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to do on that one. And one more time, I'm going to go and let this dry, and then I'll be back. Okay, coat number 2 is dry. Time for the third coat. And I know it's redundant, and I'm sorry to keep showing you, but here we go again. I want you to see the difference. And I guess this whole project is about patience and layers, because on the parts of the lotus that I did, painting on the dark surface, I undercoated these parts so they show up nice. And look at the brilliant color you get from that. If I would have just painted those pinks and whites on the black, they wouldn't have come out anywhere near as nice or vibrant. So I'm going to go, this is coat number 3. Each coat you put a little bit of less paint, a little bit of less. You put a little bit less paint on. You won't need as much. You want sheer coats. You don't want it thick on there. You could see it's covering better. Now, if I were painting on this and not crackling on it, I would probably do a 4th coat. Just because there's places like here on this little edge, you could still see through it a little bit. And 4 coats of base may sound like a lot, but as you can see, this goes really quick. Each coat goes quicker, and that's really the goal, is you put less. Okay, so I'm going to leave that. I think that'll be good enough, because once we antique it and that, it'll even out. But if you wanted a really solid white, I would go at least one more very thin coat of white. So we're going to let that dry, and then I'll be ready to start putting on the crackle. Alright, our base coats are dry, all of them, and I think it's white enough to move on. And I'm going to use the One Step Crackle from DecoArt, which I don't know why they call it One Step, because it's not, but we'll pretend it is. And I put some in a little dish, and I'm going to go with a smaller brush. I probably could go with a brush that's a little bigger, but this one's a Champagne Flat number 12 that my best friend Vera had sent me. She sent me a bunch of these. They're really nice brushes. I don't wet it when I use the Crackle. I start with a dry brush, and I like this. It's a little softer. Okay? You're going to load up the brush pretty generously, and I want my cracks to go that way. So I guess I'll start down there. I'm going to kind of pat it into place. I know it's going to be hard to see clear on white. It would be hard clear any color, I guess. But I'm putting it on kind of thick because I want kind of big cracks. I'm not going over the edge. The brush is pretty much parallel to the surface. This is how I do the weathered wood as well. And you don't want to keep going back over it. You can't, like with paint, keep going back, because both of the crackles, they kind of set up pretty quickly. And once they start to set, if you start disturbing them, they're not going to look right. So same thing where you can see the brush, I'm kind of just laying the crackle into place. Okay. So, and I want a decent amount. I'm not going to say an 1/8 inch, but probably about a 1/16. And lay the crackle down in the center of your piece and pull it to the outer edges and work your way around. I'm almost like patting it in place. Okay? It's like a pat and a drag, because it's almost a gel, so you want a layer of the gel on there. I've had so many questions from painters who don't get good results with Crackle, so I really think it's nice products, but it just takes a little bit of getting used to. When in doubt, you should practice. I know Crackle doesn't work well on porous materials. Like if I want to seal this wood, or MDF, we'll just call it wood because it's got wood in it, wood and glue. But if I didn't seal it, then part of the medium would be absorbed into the wood, and that could be attributed to a problem. And the phone is ringing, so yay. I hope Keith will get it, and I'm sorry. We get like 3 calls a week, so it figures when I'm doing a video they're gonna call. There, he got it. If it's you, I'm sorry if you called me. I'll get back to you. It's funny how that happens. I think the worst part of stress with doing videos is like the quiet, and I was trying to settle the cat today. He was antsy. So it's funny. It's quiet every other day, but I'm going to go around here too. And I think I'm going to go in that direction. The cracks tend to go in the last direction you pull them. So if you go like that, they're going to kind of line up in general. So I don't just want them patted in, I guess. So there. Now the hard part is to leave it alone. And we're going to leave it. And I will be back again. One last thing that I want to mention is they don't recommend you use like a hair dryer on it to help it along. I've done that and it's worked, but if you're having trouble, definitely let it air dry overnight. the crackle process is probably best to do right before you go to bed at night. And put this on a shelf and forget about it. And then in the morning, you'll be ready to go. Otherwise, if you go too quick, you're not going to give it time to set. So, just a word. We will be back when the crackle is dry. And we will hope we have cracks. Thanks. Alright, we're back and my crackle is dry. And I don't know if you can see it, but it did crack. You can see little tiny surface cracks in it, which is cool. There are a couple spots that are like, they look almost like little blisters because I put a lot because I wanted to be really sure that it cracked, but we'll see. They'll look good. My next step is I am going to use the DecoArt Extreme Sheen Metallic. Now you could use any metallic, you could use any paint you want. I love the Extreme Sheens. I never thought that I'd be that impressed with the paint. A new line, but they're awesome. They're like liquid metal. They really give a nice sheen to them. And what I'm going to be doing with them, this color is Vintage Brass. And I'm going to just wash it on, and I'm going to wipe it back right away with a damp, good quality paper towel. So I'm going to dampen my paper towel. I don't think you could see that. And this time we want to wet our brush. I'm using a little bit larger brush. This is a 14 flat. Again, the champagne ones. And I want a slightly thinned paint because I don't want the color to be like really profound. And what's going to happen, because you're putting water in the paint, is you have a layer of that plastic crackle over your white paint, and it's clear. That's why you can't see it, but there's all these cracks in it. So you want this metallic paint to fall into those cracks, and then when you wipe it back, it'll stay in the cracks, and you're wiping it off the top. Now your crackle should not be sticky. It should almost feel like plastic. It should be smooth and dry and not tacky at all. So we're going to try and see. I'm always timid on this, especially I didn't do a practice piece. So I'm going to put a little bit at a time, but see there, you see how my cracks are coming up. And it's a little watery, so I'm going to add a little more. Now you can really start to see them. You want enough to go in. That looks really good there, if I do say so myself. That's the look I wanted. See how the paint's getting in the cracks, and then what you do is you take your damp and you wipe it back. Now I wiped a lot back. My cloth was pretty damp, and you could see the effect there is very subtle. It looked like cracked porcelain, which is what I wanted. So you play with it. Like I want a little more color than, I like this color. That wiped off all the way. So I'm going to use less water and more paint. And now see why I don't do the edges either with this. And you could blot. There you go. That's better. You could do a couple layers because you're not going to hurt it. This is subtle. This is the subtle of the crackles. But it looks very cool. It looks cool in person too, because once you put a varnish on it, like I said, it looks like porcelain. Here's where the blister was, this big area there. It's like magic. It's fun. Let's see. To me, I wanted a softer, elegant look than the big weathered wood cracks. They're really nice for like prim, country, stuff like that. But this looks a little bit more elegant. And the metallic gives it a really nice little shimmer. I had tried using the metallic luster on this process, and it doesn't work as well because it's thicker and it doesn't, you're sitting it on top of the cracks. You're not pushing it in, it's not falling into the cracks. Oops. See, now that's almost straight paint in that area. And then when you wipe it back, you can even it off. So you may like that look too. You know, I just didn't want the paint to be too thick where it dries too fast on you, and then you can't wipe it back. And it doesn't, you can't see it here, but it's metallic. Well, I can't see it from where I'm at. I'm trying to do my video natural light so you get your colors good. But it's a really cool metallic kind of shine to it. And of course, if you varnish it, it's going to look nice too. Even if you use like a matte varnish, it'll give a moderate amount of shine because the crackle is so slick. There we go. And notice on my edges, you leave them kind of ragged. You don't want to just stop it. You work it into each other. A little more color down here. Yeah, I might have had too much water when I started that side because it wasn't showing as much as I like it. There we go. I think that looks really cool. I hope you agree. Look how pretty. That is the look I was going for. So I will let this dry, and then I'm going to come back and I'll show you what I decided to do with my edges. Okay, there's a crumb. One more cutaway and we'll be done. Hi, I'm back again. This will be the final segment for this project, but it's also a good standalone video. And what I'm going to do in this little video, it's going to be short, is to show you how to glue together my two-part ornaments and frames and pictures and all that. Now, when I painted, I didn't paint the edge of the inner piece. And the reason that being is you don't want too much paint to accumulate since it's only a 1/4 inch thick wood. The angle that you have to cut on isn't very steep, and you don't want that to fill in with paint. So when you're painting both of these edges, you could see I painted this edge on the frame. You do it very lightly, very light coats. If you have to have 2 coats, do 2 light ones. You don't want to put a lot of thick paint on here. And a lot of people glue them before they paint them, but I like to glue them after. Except like on this one, I didn't do anything on the back. I left the back blank because it's going to be all one color. Now there's some ornaments that I have where the edges on the back, they're 2-sided ornaments, so you're looking at the front and the back. And I did the edge in like a darker color so it stands out a little, and those I did paint that edge first. But in general, on most of the pieces with plain backs that hang, or this could go in an easel or that, I do not do that edge until the end, because really all you're going to see on it is that little bit that overhangs. Okay? So we'll take this apart, put that on the side. I use a little, it's called a glue bot. I had gotten mine at Lee Valley Tools in Canada and the US, but I don't know if they have them anymore, but Amazon does. I'll look for links and put them in there. And this is a flat ribbon top to it, or spout, I guess. You can replace these, which I'm probably due to do that. And I like it because it gives very much control when you're putting your glue in place. I want to mention you don't have to glue all the way around this because nobody's going to be leaning on it or pulling at it. You know, it's just more or less to lock it into place. So what I do on it, I used to go all the way around. If I have older videos, I do. I'm putting my glue toward the bottom half because that's the half that's going to be covered, the half of the edge. You don't want to put it towards the top. And as I said, you don't need a lot. You can see it's kind of spotty where I'm putting it in. Really, that's plenty. I mean, if it gets pushed on hard enough that it's going to come apart, then something's wrong. So you can see I just put a little thin bead, and then what I do, set the piece on top until I can get a good hold on it. Turn it around and hold it through the center. This is a little harder on the big pieces like the clocks, but it works. And then you allow it to fall in evenly and push it gently on opposite ends to seat it into place evenly. Not too far, as I almost did. There we go. You don't want to push too hard, but once it's in, it's good. And I have a little dish of water here and a clean paper towel. And then I'm going to just run this around the edge. That's why it might be a good idea if you want to put a light spray of finish before you do the gluing process, because that'll repel the glue. You won't get as much glue, but see, there's very little seeping here. You're going to get some seeping in the back. And I'm going to do the same, go around the edge with it. And then you let that dry, and you're pretty much good to go. So what I'll do is I'll paint the back later in either just the white or a matching. I might even crackle the back if I want to get fancy with it. So, but this process is how you do all the ornaments that I have. I usually have a little reference mark to line up on the back so you can tell the front from the back, and the circles, you can get them perfectly aligned so they fit into each other. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed the project. You could look for the other videos. They're all going to be on there separate, I believe, the steps for this project. They'll be up on my YouTube Scroll Girl Canada channel. And the project is for Tolltown, which is an online painting community. It's tolltown.com, and it's very reasonable price. You get a monthly subscription, or you could order for a year, and it gives you access to the archives, and you get 2 video classes per month plus a quick paint, plus there's a Facebook page, and it's really nice. It's a nice thing to do. So you can come to my site, tollpaintingdesigns.com, for any of my surfaces or patterns. So I hope to see you there, and I hope you enjoyed the videos. Thank you.